All right, good afternoon, everyone. Happy to have you all here. I'm Kesha Rogers, member of the LaRouche Back Policy Committee, and we're in the middle of an extraordinary, life-changing, world-transforming new paradigm that we have to make sure that the American people truly understand that this is a mankind diverging right now or moving toward a total renaissance. And the key thing is we have to, what we just experienced in this past week is quite extraordinary. And I'm going to go through some of these developments. I think I want to title my discussion for today, the growth paradigm for mankind, the emergence of the growth paradigm for mankind. Now, what I'd like to start with is, first of all, to situate where we are in the fight that is emerging of the new paradigm for mankind versus the end of an era, the end of the British Empire. And this is exactly what has to once and for all be accomplished, that we are in the fight of our lives at this very moment. And I'll go through some of those developments, but first we should situate what's going on with the recent conference that just took place in Europe, that the Schiller Institute held in Europe in a place near Frankfurt called Switzerland. And there were nearly 200 guests there, attendees there, who heard speakers from Europe, China, the United States, Africa, the Middle East, all demonstrating what is happening with the rapid emergence of a new paradigm of growth and development, as is seen with the Belt and Road Initiative, which has been Lyndon and Helga LaRouche's vision for the past 4 decades now. And this was a phenomenal conference that Mrs. LaRouche and Mr. LaRouche both took part in. I want to give a quick, take a quote from this conference. First of all, people should know that it was very fitting, the title of it, called Fulfilling the Dream of Mankind. And what Mrs. LaRouche characterized in this conference as a beautiful conception of what is the future of mankind that we must seek to bring about. And you see what's happening right now with developments around the Belt and Road are flourishing at a rapid pace. And it's happening at such a rapid pace right now that China is continuing to lead the world because of their commitment to the vision that Lynn and Helga laid out, but more importantly, the commitment to a true classical renaissance for mankind. And throughout my discussion today, what I like to do is I want to situate that in the decades-long fight and unique qualifications of Lyndon LaRouche as a leading American statesman, physical economist, and why this vision, as LaRouche has laid out for a new paradigm for mankind, has been based on what he has made breakthroughs and discoveries unlike any other economist on the planet on the question of the science of physical economy, based on the idea of the advancement of the creative powers of mankind, that is what economics starts with. And so I think that was very much demonstrated in this very beautiful remark by Helga during the conference, where she said, if we revive the classical culture of all nations and enter a beautiful dialogue among them, mankind will experience a new renaissance and unleash an enormous creativity of the human species like never before. Now, we've clearly in many occasions been discussing the role of the Chinese in fulfilling that vision, with what happened with President Xi Jinping announcing the role of China in embarking and leading the global world initiative of the Belt and Road Initiative around this harmonic unifying of mankind, what he calls a community of shared future for mankind. And this is really what is now underway. And just in a recent discussion, in a recent presentation by the president of China, people have seen with the commitment to the Belt and Road since 2014 by Xi Jinping, the president of China. This has been completely unstoppable from what has emerged in the development and cooperation in China, in Europe, in South America, in Africa, very prominently in Africa, throughout Southwest Asia. And what Xi Jinping referenced and developed in a dialogue with world political parties at a CPC dialogue that just happened just yesterday. He said, he delivered a very beautiful address, and this was a part of, this is on the second day of a 4-day CPC dialogue with the world political parties. He says, I am delighted to see that the friendly cooperation between China and other countries is increasingly expanding, and the concept of the community with a shared future for mankind is gaining support and endorsement from the increasing number of people. She told the more than 600 representatives from nearly 300 political parties from 120 countries. The Belt and Road Initiative, he said, is the practice or the action of the concept of a shared future, and has become a huge cooperation platform for countries to realize their common development, So now, this is a vision that truly signifies who we are as a species, as a people created in the image of a creator to actually carry out the continued process of creation on the planet. And it's a beautiful idea that right now is actually being targeted and disrupted to be destroyed. Because as the key thing about the role of Lyndon LaRouche and what he has done is that he has never backed down on recognizing that there is an anti-growth, anti-creativity in the apparatus that is very clearly to be defined, and that the oligarchical system of anti-human development has been the basis of the fight that Lyndon LaRouche has been waging, that he has committed himself to putting an end to once and for all. And I think it's very clear right now that we are seeing the emergence of a true growth paradigm. Look at what China has done to lift over 700 people out of poverty in the past 30, 700, yes, million, 700 million, yes, out of poverty in the past 30 years. The rapid pace of growth and development in the past 5 years under the president of Xi Jinping, which is very beautifully laid out in his speech to the Congress, the Communist Party Congress in China just a few weeks ago. So now this is what we're up against and what's going on right now. And I'm going to go through this briefly. And many of you may have just received the latest email that came out from LaRouche PAC, and also a leaflet that is a follow-up to the report that we put out exposing why this cancer right now couldn't be more important for the survival of mankind. And we're now in a mobilization a rapid, fast-paced mobilization to get over 10,000, 20,000 more of these pamphlets printed. They've gone out rapidly across the country, around Trump Towers, throughout New York, throughout Texas, and across the country. That what we expose in terms of the criminal apparatus of Robert Mueller, however you want to say his name, and this amoral legal assassin who has committed to very much carrying out the purpose of the British Empire, which is to destroy this principle of a common destiny, common future, the creative powers, a growth paradigm for mankind. Because what has been the mission of Mueller and his Inc. on behalf of the British Empire? Well, you see this if there was one person that they said they had to take down, to destroy, and to stop, it was Lyndon LaRouche. But they haven't been successful, and up until this point for the past several decades, because the commitment to truth is always going to prevail. And today, just in the context of what we just did with this conference in Bad Soden in Frankfurt area, I want to make this very clear what we just accomplished here, because some people say, oh, the Schiller Institute, they do these beautiful conferences and they have nice classical music, and it's really nice idea, but it's a utopian dream. That's what some people say, oh, it's never going to be accomplished. But the key thing right now is it's actually being realized, it's being accomplished. And Lyndon LaRouche's vision is something that people have to realize. This is a toe-to-toe battle to once and for all put an end to the British imperial policies that have been out to destroy the progress of mankind. And so what we just put forth is people know that Barbara Boyd, collaborator, long-term activist with Lyndon LaRouche, and works very closely with Mr. LaRouche in our organization, in our legal team, and so forth, wrote the report exposing the crimes of Robert Mueller and his attacks on LaRouche and the whole targeting and coup run against the president, and particularly the fact that Robert Mueller was the apparatus pushing the cover-up of 9/11. Now, and people who haven't read this report, I'm not giving a class on going through this report, I think the key thing is you have to read this. If you have been around this movement, watching this movement, if you want to understand what is truly at stake right now and what the battle is we're in, then you have to look at this. So I'm going to make a plug here that not only should people read this, but if you're watching, you should contribute, go online right now, make a contribution to our political organization to make sure that we can continue to print out this dossier. And those in the room here, I encourage you, as I'm developing this, think about what your role is going to be to make sure that we can escalate on this campaign. So the follow-up to this report that was just released by Helga, just in terms of a recent statement by Barbara Boyd, in a recent statement, is where we stand, LaRouche PAC's statement on plea. And I'm not going to go through too many details on this because people should read it, and the expert on it is Barbara and what she's doing with our legal and investigative team here. But I think it's very clear right now that the recent escalation of the coup and the criminal activity by Robert Mueller and his team show is very clear that this must be defeated immediately, that the only option on the table at this present time is to bring the United States, to free the president, to bring the United States once and for all fully into the emerging new paradigm. That means joining with the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, I am going to say a few things about this escalated coup plot and operation against the President of the United States, which is really escalating after the extraordinary trip that happened just a few weeks ago with President Trump going to Asia. And again, we're not seeing one snippet, inkling, nothing of the fact that the president just went to Asia. There was billions of dollars in trade deals, memorandums of understanding that were signed. What are we hearing? Well, we're hearing a bunch of, first of all, BS about working all over the place. And I mean, you think that these Congress members had some guts and, they actually had some moral values, but that's another subject. That's another subject here. I mean, the key thing though is, we're looking at the fact you just take what just happened with the plea agreement, I guess you want to call it, with Michael Flynn, and just one second here. So, what is this all about? Well, Barbara Boyd and our organization has laid out the facts very clearly here. And it's also picked up and communicated also in a recent article that was released in Consortium News. If I can here we go. Find the article. The Consortium News says the scalp taking of General Flynn. Now, the reality of what's happening and what happened with this is that the Flynn, General Flynn, and his admitting to lying to the FBI is not the issue at hand. The issue at hand right now is that this is a way for them, because the complete freak out, for them to try to cover their rears, because the reality is everything is now coming out into the open in terms of the British role in this whole apparatus of the coup against the president. And, the fact of the matter is that Flynn didn't commit any crime. That's been shown. There's first, the crime that the FBI sees is, well, it's not about lying to the FBI. Hell, they lie to everybody. But it's about the fact that the crime is, we don't like your policy. If you're promoting economic growth, if you're promoting development of nuclear power plants throughout the Middle East, if you're promoting ending the regime change, war policy, the policy of defending and continuing to arm ISIS, then you're a threat. That's a crime. It's a crime to work and to talk with Russia, according to those apparatus around Mueller and the ones who recognize right now that their game is up, it's over. This empire is defeated. The writing on the wall is like Belshazzar's feast is there, and it is the Belt and Road Initiative, the new paradigm, the emergence of the economic development that's rapidly taking off right now. So, as Barbara pointed out here, what the Mueller's counterpunch is to the growing momentum from the House Intelligence Committee and the courts to fully reveal the British hand in this coup. That's what it is. Now, remember, again, as you were pointing out, that when Flynn was the CIA director under President Obama, when he got fired because he put Obama in his place, and he went after the whole war policy and the policy of the regime change and so forth, and was then an immediate target. So what from then on, because of once the Obama administration led the NSA operation on the unmasking of Flynn, and after he was illegally wiretapped in a private discussion he was having prior to him being in the President Trump cabinet with Kislyak, a Russian official. So we can go through the details, but I think the key thing is clear right now, which is the fact that this is the end of this empire's criminal coup plot against the president. It's been exposed from the VIPS memorandum, exposing the lies around the Russiagate fraud to, the fact that, yeah, they've gotten Flynn to agree to a plea bargain based on the fact that this was a witch hunt, a operation to destroy him. Somebody come after your son and your family and says you're going to go to prison for life and so forth. But the key thing now is the only thing that he and everyone else has to do who recognizes that this is a crime against humanity is to fight like hell. And that means to say, look, we're not going to give in and allow for this empire to get away with this. And I think that that's the message that was put in the article in Consortium News today by Robert Perry. And Robert Perry, his message says, Russiagate enthusiasts are thrilled over the guilty plea of President Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, for lying to the FBI about inauguration conversations with the Russian ambassador. But the case should alarm true civil libertarians, yes. Says, what is arguably most disturbing about this case is that the then National Security Advisor Flynn was pushed into the perjury trap by Obama administration holdovers at the Justice Department, who concocted an unorthodox legal rationale for subjecting Flynn and FBI to an FBI interrogation 4 days after he took office, testifying Flynn's recollection of the conversation while the FBI agent had transcripts of the calls intercepted by the National Security Agency. And he just goes on about how this was totally illegal. It's been illegal that the cover-up, or excuse me, that Mueller has been operating and working with Comey, the FBI director. It's been illegal, the rapid pace of the leaks coming out of Mueller. So again, as we've said, and many people, this guy has to be stopped, has to be brought down. He is nothing more than a criminal. So, and we are in a position to do that right now. So that's, I think, give me a second here. So that's where I want to leave that. But Mike, why don't you go ahead and put the, yes. Oh, here we go. So I want to, first of all, in reference to this conference that just took place, point out something very important in terms of a message that was sent to the conference, which we're going to play a little bit later. I'm going to put it in the middle of the discussion, the presentation, but I'll actually have a link, was from our collaborators in Yemen. And our collaborators in Yemen have been fully engaged in the fight to fight the genocide, war policy, the bombing, and the attacks that are going on that have been a product of the British Saudi-led operations that have been defended by many people in our government, in the U.S. Congress, and so forth. And the most beautiful thing is that when you see this video later, and I'm bringing this up because what just happened was that our leader of the Yemeni movement, he founded the Yemeni Youth Council, committed to the ideas of bringing Yemen into the Belt and Road, New Silk Road Initiative. In Yemen, they actually purchased, I believe it was close to 1,000 copies of these reports to be released. They were actually this report has been transcribed into Arabic as well as Chinese. And their commission, their youth council, many members of the Yemeni governmental layers, economic layers, has been studying intently the economic discoveries and policies of Lyndon LaRouche, including his 4 laws for economic recovery, has been studying Lyndon LaRouche's discoveries in the science of physical economy. And this was the beautiful video that was sent, was a reflection of how that country is being transformed with Lynn's ideas. And what is happening is that they're taking and empowering people in the middle of a devastating war, in the middle of people all around being bombed and killed, and starvation going on, and children who are being left with no future, and saying we're going to commit to a future, and the future lies in the power of ideas exemplified by Lyndon LaRouche. And so what just happened, tragically, is that fortunately, our friend in Yemen, Mr. Fouad Ghaffari, fortunately he was not harmed, but his home, this was this 40-year-old young man who was the leader of our Yemeni movement, was completely committed to the ideas of Lyndon LaRouche. His home was targeted by an RPG, by a wet bomb in Yemen. No one was hurt. It was windows and various things were blown out. But this is the life of what people are facing right now. Now, in the reality is we should take a moment to reflect on how too comfortable Americans are. That's going on over there. Or that's not us. Or that's some different culture, different religion, different people. What do I care? That's evil. And I think that the key thing right now is that we have to actually change our identity as mankind committed to what Helga and Xi Jinping, the president of China, and Lynn's commitment to the common destiny, common future, and the shared principle of mankind, that we all breathe and the same air. We all have the same needs. We all have the same urging of discovery and creativity. And so during the conference, in the context of the message that was sent, a very beautiful message from our colleagues in Yemen who are continuing to fight, there was a resolution that was adopted, and it's very short. I want to read it to you because I think we have to make the commitment that here in the United States that we're going to fulfill this resolution. It's called the End of the War and Humanitarian Crisis in Yemen. It says, given the documented fact that the war on Yemen, waged by the Saudi-led coalition since March 2015 on Yemen, has caused an unprecedented humanitarian crisis in the country as a result of the bombardment of the country's infrastructure and the total blockade imposed by air, land, and sea. The attendees of the November 25th, 26th, 2017 Schiller Institute International Conference in Bad Soden, Germany, called for 1. An immediate ceasefire by all parties. 2. The lifting of the blockades imposed on the country, especially the port of Hodeidah port and the Sana'a International Airport, allowing an immediate humanitarian aid. 3. The return to the national reconciliation, process and dialogue that was underway but was interrupted by the war. And it says the purpose of such negotiations is to find a political solution to the crisis in Yemen. Also, number 4 is assist Yemen in a rapid and large-scale reconstruction process focused on infrastructure projects to regain the livelihood of the nation and the integration of Yemen into a Belt and Road Initiative. So we have to stop this genocide policy. We have to stop the killing. We have to stop the starvation, the war policy, and this message that and this resolution adopted at our conference in Germany is absolutely key. So as we can see here, we put together just a map here so you can see where Yemen is. There we go. Saudi Arabia. This is where you had the ongoing bombing campaigns. This is Sana'a here, coming from Saudi. And I mean, this policy has to be defeated, and the way to defeat it is to join the United States with Russia, China, and Russia, China, and the many other countries around the world, particularly the United States, Russia, and China, to defeat this war apparatus once and for all. So, and as I said, we're going to show the video a little bit later on. Now, so put up, Lynn, the quote. Okay. So I want to go to just situating some of the emerging developments of growth happening around the planet as a result of the Belt and Road. And there's so many that I'm not going to be able to go through them all today, but I think it's important to situate it from the standpoint of we're not just talking about various infrastructure projects popping up around the world, but there's a true commitment to the creative advancement of mankind, which has been very much understood by what China has been committed to, what they've been doing, as they've studied the ideas of what Lyndon LaRouche understands as the true American system of political economy, as the true emergence of a science of physical economy. And I wanted to just read these and kind of lead a discussion on these two very critical points in the context of the principles of Lyndon LaRouche's discovery and the understanding of the unique science of physical economy. So LaRouche has been making breakthroughs in the area of economics and economic forecasting since the 1950s. And his economic forecast has been based on a standard that is unmatchable to any other standard of economics really around the planet, but particularly in the West, which the transatlantic economic policies that dominated our education system has been nothing more than market values and monetary standards and various things of that nature. But this is what LaRouche focuses on, two following axiomatic, as he called it, specifications of growth and of his economic forecasting, which you can see. It says, one, the sole source of increase of the human species potential relative population density per capita and per square kilometer of the Earth's surface is anti-entropic changes in the physical characteristics of the outcome of human social behavior, changes which depend upon continued scientific and technological progress. And secondly, it says, those discoveries of principles of artistic composition which are prompted by the defining function of metaphor in classical modes, in poetry, tragedy, music, and plastic art forms have an even higher degree of significance than discoveries of physical principles. Very, very challenging, or something to think about there, because it really makes the point right now of what is the underlying principle of the Belt and Road Initiative, the New Silk Road. And it's one of the things that's really fully developed on many occasions in the speech of the President Xi Jinping as a model, taking from the model of Lyndon LaRouche and his economic science, is the commitment to culture. And, uplifting people out of poverty, the increases in scientific and technological progress, commitment by China right now to fulfill the vision of increasing mankind's power over the solar system, what we're doing in space exploration, how they're completely taking off right now in their development of a rapid pace growing space program, but also what you're seeing in terms of the development of putting mankind at the center of economic growth. And this was a part of the discussion that's been ongoing. If people have been watching our economics series in classes, one thing that's very clear about the unique nature of Lyndon LaRouche's concept of economic science is that money is not at the center of growth, market values, really infrastructure projects is not at the center of growth, but it's the creative power of man. Because in order to actually, for these projects, which we're seeing emerging at a rapid pace, to actually to be able to be fulfilled, they don't just build and create themselves. They're ideas in the minds of man, in the minds of human beings that actually are put into action, ideas that flourish. That's what the Belt and Road Initiative is. It was once an idea that is now fully being realized. And I'll give you an example, which is, why don't we go to the Macau, Helga. I'll come back to that in a minute. I'm sorry. Okay. So just so people know, we just got an exciting report today that following the conference in Germany, the Schiller Institute conference, Helga LaRouche traveled to China, and she had a chance to visit a beautiful masterpiece bridge that has been in the works since 2019. No, excuse me, since 2019. Since it's been in the works since 2009, and it's called the Hong Kong Zhuhai Macau Bridge. And it this bridge is just a masterpiece of the engineering, economic, creative skills of mankind that, I mean, I'll give you a couple of the stats here. She had a chance to travel to certain distances across this bridge. And she just came back from her travels, speaking at various conferences or events there. But when she was describing how her experience in actually going across this bridge, she said it was one of awe. I don't even know how she described it. She was just totally blown away what she saw. I mean, this is one of the tallest, largest bridges in the world that was basically started to be constructed in 2009, and they're now at the final stages were starting to be completed around July of 2017 of this year. And just to kind of give you a sense, you have a complex sea crossing project, which it's going from connecting. It's going to connect bridges and tunnelways spanning from Xinjiang to Hong Kong, from Hong Kong to Macau to Wuhan, which is Hong Kong here, Macau, Wuhan. We have a bridge process that goes across this whole expansion here. Yeah, across the whole ocean, the expansion of it. Yeah, it's actually the bridge itself. The main bridge connection is 22.9 kilometers. It's 14.2 miles long and includes 3 cable stay spans between 280 and 460 meters, 920 and 1,510 feet. 1,510 feet. The last bridge towers were erected in June of 2016, and you have the straight part of the bridge. The elements there are about 4,860 meters long. This is the straight section that the undersea tunnel was installed in July of 2016. So, I mean, the point is, it took them 8 years to build this. Helga was making the reference that, in Europe, you have projects that people are working on that takes several decades or more, and they never really get completed. And I was thinking, travel in Houston, go over there to 290 highway in Texas here, and they've been working on that for a couple of decades, and it's nothing compared to the magnitude of engineering. I mean, because when a nation is committed to growth and development, I mean, they've put so many people commit themselves to this. You got hundreds, thousands of people working on these projects to get them finished. Here, in various other places, you might have, 5 people trying to, dig a tractor and dig some dirt and try to put the project up. But I mean, the key thing right now is you have miracle masterpieces that are emerging, and we're right in the center of this. I mean, the fact that Helga had the opportunity to go and visit the aftermath of this very beautiful conference that we just held, which people know, she's been named as the Silk Road Lady. People know that the vision of the Belt and Road is what has been the commitment, the vision of Lyndon and Helga for many decades. So, somebody want to say something?
Of course, the Russians have a specific word for that kind of thing they were talking about, which is like a project. Raymond.
Raymond, what?
Raymond.
Raymond.
Yeah.
That sounds like French, but So now let's go back to the population growth chart. Okay, so the idea of Lyndon LaRouche's very his discoveries in the science of physical economy, his discoveries in the advancement of the increases in the productive powers of labor, is really centered around this conception of, as I said, of mankind at the center of an economic system, the creative powers of mankind. And if you, once you put human beings at that, that's the focal point of your economic growth, is breakthroughs in new discoveries of scientific principles. That's when you see an emergence of a rapid growth process. And so one of the things we've seen this chart used in many of our presentations, but I think it's key that you think about from the age of the time of prior to the 15th century cultural classical renaissance in Italy, the numbers of population throughout the planet was somewhere in the millions, the hundreds of millions. And once you had that breakthrough in terms of new scientific principles of growth, which was the basis of the 15th century Renaissance, you saw that the result of the Renaissance was the unleashing of the greatest rate of growth of classical culture, the principles of the advancement of the human being, the human condition of the human being. And this was done through development of infrastructure, of breakthroughs and creative discoveries around new scientific principles, around the ideas of advancing in machine tool design, which the advancement of classical education and the, let's go to the next one. And I want to just show, there's a couple of pictures here because I had a chance to visit an exhibit that was in Houston, in Galveston area, pardon me, not too long ago, of Da Vinci. And if someone had made some really creative discoveries around the breakthroughs in new machine tool technological design principles, what this is actually is it's a demo of Da Vinci's conception of a city building. And so this was one of the things they had at the museum there in Galveston area. And one of the things that they're talking about is in this demonstration is what they described is how you have your city built together in terms of how your artistic centers, your cultural centers, your areas of development around your machine tool design centers and your living quarters, and then also for sanitation, safety. He was looking into how to make cities more safe, more sanitized, waste management, various other things that would actually improve the conditions of life of the human beings. And obviously this was very important because you're talking about sanitation, waste management, things that we might take for granted today, but were very important coming out of the Dark Age period, because a lot of people died due to various diseases. And this is what Da Vinci was looking at next. This is just another example of gear developing new gears. And this is another one of the demonstrations of Da Vinci in terms of, he did things such as looking at the Archimedean screw looking at various relationship of technological improvements in gear designs, machine tool principles, how you increase the productivity of society by making work uh, more easily accessible, making the ability to work at rapid pace easier. So because you had the machines that's going to help to improve the labor conditions, the work conditions of the population. So this is some of the things that Da Vinci was looking at, which I think is critical to understanding, the idea of the Renaissance as an emergence of the power of new creative ideas and discoveries done by human beings, by the human mind. So next one. So I wanted to, not too pretty, but just kind of give a point of what this is demonstrates what we were just showing here, an example, which is, this is LaRouche's concept of the machine tool design principle, and how, and this is one of the major concepts that he developed in his So You Wish to Learn About Economics. And when we're talking about discoveries of increasing in the science, the technological advancement of a population, you do start, he starts here with the concept of design based on a discovery of a scientific, scientific principle, but based on an idea, a breakthrough that occurs in the human mind. And, that in order to increase the development of technological progress and machine tool design, it goes back to the second point of his two axiomatic discoveries around classical composition and classical culture and education, that you have to have an education system that actually fosters economic, or fosters creative growth. And you would, as you see, he's like putting the idea of the machine tool design principle as a function of the increased discoveries and breakthroughs of mankind, which is going to continue to advance the productive powers of labor, to increase the growth of your society as you develop make new scientific discoveries, develop new principles. Those ideas are going to propagate throughout your society, and you are going to really see a development, a increase in rapid pace of development. And once you do that, then the population growth chart that you saw before, you think about how from around the period of the 15th century Renaissance period to today, it's taken off. Now, some of the anti-growth Malthusians would say, this is bad, we're good at a few 100 million, probably less would have been better for us. But now we got 700, now we have 7 billion. What are we going to do with that? Well, that's too many for us to carry out our oligarchical rule. So the policy is destruction, war, famine, anti-growth. And this is what we have to put a stop to. And the commitment right now of Lyndon LaRouche and our movement is to fulfill the principles outlined in the very vision that at the center of economic growth and progress, which the growth paradigm is rapidly emerging, as I said, around the planet with the Belt and Road, with the vision of Lyndon LaRouche being fulfilled, that the only way that that vision is going to continue and to be fully realized is when we say we're putting an end to the anti-growth British imperial policy once and for all. So there's a number of other beautiful developments that are taking place right now. Just in terms of many conferences happening around the world committed to development of the Belt and Road Initiative, and people can read about them. One of the things, go to the charts there. Into those. Okay, yeah, that's good. One of the things that's just been announced in terms of the growth paradigm and the rapid pace of development of infrastructure projects around the Belt and Road. And after I've gone through what I have, you have a better sense of what these infrastructure projects really represent, how they transform society. They're not just, build a bridge and plop it up here and there, but you have a transformation of the growth of a society. And so what this is the Chabahar Port. You can read about all of these various projects. What LaRouche says, you put these increases together in terms of understanding this type of economic growth from the standpoint of increases in economic platforms. But so the Chabahar Port is one of the corridors that is listed in our Silk Road Becomes the World Land Bridge report. And it's now been announced that the first phase of this report is going to be completed tomorrow. And the president of Iran is going to be addressing the completion of this port. So this is the international north-south transport. It is the Chabahar Port is the it's the port of Chabahar in Iran. So it goes from India to the port of Chabahar, Chabahar in Iran there. And so the phase here is connecting Iran is one of the phases in terms of that the Iranian president Rouhani is going to announce as a completion. So, but keep going for a second. This gives you, this is the Chabahar port here, but then you also have connections in terms of China to Duisburg, Germany, and various other connections, and then which are now, I want to bring this up because that's recent meetings in the 16+1 talks. The completion of these projects are fully underway right now and in rapid discussion, along with, as I said, you have, as we speak right now, conferences going on in South America, in Africa, and various other places. Everybody is on the Belt and Road bandwagon. The whole world is, as we say in our song for the Schiller Institute, get on board, is getting on board the Belt and Road. Okay, next one. Okay, so this just gives you, at the top there, you see the economic, Silk Road economic belt. And then this is the original, some of the original maritime Silk Road development. But people have seen this in our report for the Silk Road. But I wanted to just show this because this is what's emerging right now. But this is nothing compared to what you're actually seeing. Right now, the rapid pace of rail development in Africa, I should make the point that it's not being lost on the United States, that China is the place to be in terms of cooperation, economic development. There is, for people who don't know, because I don't know if this has been in the news, but too busy talking about other needless stuff, is is that the mayor of Houston is now leading a delegation to China, to actually the places in China where I was just showing where Helga LaRouche, near there, one of the places that the mayor is leading a delegation of 80 business leaders. This is Mayor Turner. Houston, 80 business leaders, um, two city council members, and one state representative. And the the commitment is very understood there. Like, China is the place where if you want to see economic growth, I think it was very much demonstrated. If people haven't seen the video on the website, West Virginia, the West Virginia governor. Remember, as I said, when President Trump went to West Virginia, when he went to China, there were a number of trade deals signed. One of the things that came about is West Virginia was received something like $86 billion in economic trade deals and cooperation with China. And West Virginia governor said, it's coming, Belt and Road, don't get behind this one, get on board. And for crying out loud, what's wrong with you? You don't realize China, you got to work with China. And so more people are starting to realize that. I think we're getting more reports back. It's going to, the fact of the matter is what happens in terms of the trip being led, the delegation by Houston mayor to China, to Shenzhou, to Shanghai, to various other places, which you go into. China has a sister city. Houston has a sister city in China. Yes, do that. Yeah, Shenzhou. Shenzhen, yeah, Shenzhen.
When are they leaving?
They already left. Yeah.
Are the business associates that
She-
Texas?
Yes, they're from the Houston area. Mm-hmm. In the Houston area. Yeah, it's in Shenzhen. So yeah, that's a good one. So you see it, Zhuhai. So this is what you have, the crossing of Hong Kong to Zhuhai. This is where Helga was. This is the Shenzhen over there at the top. Above Hong Kong is Shenzhen. That's our sister city. They're also in Shanghai. That's where they're going to, and another place I don't remember. Oh, Beijing. Okay, that's I think the key thing is we are in a moment of unstoppable growth and a beautiful, as the title of our conference in Germany, fulfilling the dream of mankind. We are on the verge of doing that right now, and there's so much more that's rapidly emerging and taking place right now. But I think people can get an idea that the future lies in what our commitment to bringing the United States into this vision, to making sure that the President of the United States is free to fully fulfill the role of the United States in joining in the Belt and Road Initiative. And that means, again, we have to break this tool. We have to educate a lot of people. We have to break the cultural degeneracy that has been inflicted on our population and on our society for far too long. And we have to give people a sense of what it truly means to be human, what a vision for mankind truly looks like. It's not, a society of dark age immersed in drug culture and Hollywood and in rock and roll, in the post 1963 cultural paradigm that we've seen after the death of President Kennedy. It's something that is highly human and creative, and it is a product of realizing a shared principle of destiny, of shared humanity. for mankind, as Xi Jinping said. So we got some work to do, a lot of work to do, and I want to leave it at that and see if you have any questions or discussions. Do you want to show the video? No, video of our friends in Yemen. So, well, no, because the key thing about it is that you still have the war apparatus in Congress right now that they should be called out for. I mean, the fact is, if you have the coup of the operations that's protecting the whole Saudi attacks on Yemen, like Robert Mueller, he still is allowed to run rampant and push his criminal apparatus, then no, you're not going to solve that. But that's why this is important. Huh? The reason is because the Saudis and the British see the Yemen want to grow economically, and that they think that see the Yemen represents a threat because it doesn't want to be a tool of the Saudi led operations. So that's I mean, sure, there's always like this religious, Wahhabism, not wanting to go with the Saudi-led operations on religion. It's always religious war policy on that. But the way that we're going to defeat this is to recognize that it's all a controlled apparatus. All of the division, the religious war, the policies that have been ongoing have been a control apparatus by the British Empire. So Saudis have no power. They're lackeys for the British. And if the U.S., lets them get away with it because you have some criminals in our U.S. Congress, and I think, this is, you look at the fact that, the people who are standing up, who are calling for a stopping of the attacks on Yemen right now, blockades from the food sources to be going into Yemen and thus forth. People like Rand Paul, they're facing major attacks. But the American people and leaders in Congress have to adopt the policy that was laid out by the Schiller Institute to stop the genocide in Yemen. And I mean, that's the key thing right now. Every single Congress member has to be actually targeted and said, are you going to continue to allow this genocide? If you are, get the hell out of here. Because we're not going to take this anymore, because if they're willing to allow it for any nation, what are they going to do? The United States, they'll throw you into the scrap heap too. Don't think you're safe. Safety right now lies in saying we're going to actually go with the economic recovery program of Lyndon LaRouche, joining with the Belt and Road Initiative, uniting the three powers of the world, which, Russia, China, India, Russia, China, United States, so forth, has been a total threat to this imperial system. But it's unstoppable. If the president didn't have to deal with, we're not supposed to be working with Russia, and they can actually cooperate in the areas that need to be cooperated in, such as defeating of ISIS, putting Saudi in their place, and saying, look, we can cooperate on economic growth, but you're not going to continue to get away with this murderous policy that we're carrying out. Stop being a fool of the British Empire and actually, get some sense, get on board. So that's what the reality is. I mean, there's no other option right now.
They use, seems to be showing different things. One seems to tip towards the south. The other one more like what I would have recommended, which is from Beijing up to Guam, rather than the route with the global force up into Europe, right? It was more like a northern route. Is that what they're actually doing, or what were the...
There was two different projects. One of them was just showing the Chaba Harcourt, which the one that dipped at the bottom.
One of them showed a tap.
Yes, that. I think that was, that's the rail connection. That is underway right now. And that's actually in the midst of discussion. Go ahead. There are 40 different. That's what I was saying. That picture doesn't even show. It only shows a small portion of the. I mean, it's just one connection from China to Germany to Europe there. But I mean, I was saying that there's the rapid pace of development. We actually need to do a new report because there's been so much growth in terms of the rail systems and development in Africa. China has, they have over 21,000 plus miles of high-speed rail systems, and it just alone was supposed to be high speed, so we're talking about 260 kilometers or so. So
when you go on the they're not that fast. They take 14 days.
The ones inside China are
the
ones,
passenger line.
The passenger line. Oh, the freight lines, the one that's going from Beijing over to the long one to Europe. Yeah, which is 2 weeks, which is a much shorter time because I think the ones before it was taking something like 21 plus days. Right, so 21 to 30 days, and you're talking about the cut down to something like 14 days. That's pretty fascinating there.
I just want to go back to Lynn's economics. You said one, this capacity of the human beings to be creative, these infrastructure projects, science and breakthroughs. But the second portion, when you talked about creative identity, cultural, that it's really the basis on which you get the rate of development. You're actually proving mankind's ability to apply that power. And when Roosevelt did that in the war years, you have the second time the British Empire who thought they had the American spirit broken, and they were wrecking it, that American spirit was brought back. And then you have what Helga refers to Congress with hope for freedom that comes in after we want to crush this ability. And John and I were just up in Austin. When they built this whole cultural freedom operation off of studies of shell shock in World War I, we were standing and organizing, and a young woman comes up on the way in. She's interested. She comes out, and she was in the military station in Iraq. And then we were talking about how the first time in 16 years now, we got the first bombings of the Iraqi, first bombings of the drug fields in Afghanistan. The laboratories and the fields. But anyway, there's a move and a policy. And when we were discussing that, and she was agreeing, everybody's heard a dumpster, when an empty dumpster is flat, dumpster or something heavy bangs into that metal. This shot went off about half a block away, and this woman just scattered. She was really shocked. She had this cultural reality that she lived through probably for a number of years. And you think about that kind of effect, and you see networks in Yemen actually reading the highest concept of twin under this kind of situation. It was a real fight going through the mind. When you look at this kind of effect, what came out of this cultural freedom is Congress of Cultural Freedom. It caused a number of psychological shocks. It was sort of in the shifting in the culture, whatever. So you have people like good people who come up and they're hanging on desperately to a belief that one person just that points out if we go back to morality, if we go back to this, but there's no basis to actually deliver, and they, in many cases, hang on to that notion so psychologically desperately that you can't really get in. They won't hear you. The rate that you experience people actually taking that real report and listen to what we're saying, you watch through the program, how you deliver $8 trillion worth of development. To put these two things together for people. That's why we've got to get this report out. We're in a position right now to break this. And if we look at, in that sense, here you had a nation design this kind of psychological weapon operation as policy. That's what I'm going to represent. You know, we put this title on it. This guy is this kind of assassin. You know, we're not playing games. This is a real life in the fight. And when you look at this report, you can now actually deliver to the population if you stop this. You don't need everybody to read this kind of report. I'd just like to reinforce that. One would be plugged in terms of reading the report, getting it out, moving other people to get this off, and then secondly, applying it ourselves. Organize it. And the new choose that.
Yep, absolutely. And I just encourage people, you should not, anybody who is not going to our website is not in a position to fight like they need to be fighting. So to be on the activities of the LaRouche PAC website, the Schiller Institute website, various, and I think, you know, one thing that was made very clear is, you know, the beautiful vision that was laid out and the role that Helga laid out in terms of the historic connection between the 5,000-year history, the Confucian history of China, to the classical Renaissance and the ideas of Leibniz and the ideas of the Renaissance that is now truly being fulfilled. That, you know, this was against what Leibniz laid out, against religious warfare and all of this, but there is a common principle that unites all of mankind, and that, you know, whether it's the principles of agape in Christianity or the ideas of Confucianism, you know, it's all a love for mankind and for the development of mankind. So I just wanted to say that because she lays it out very beautifully in her speech to the conference, which you can find on the website, you can find on the LaRouche PAC website, in terms of, you know, this gives you an idea of, you know, this conference. We have to, as Ron just said, you know, it's very clear that we have emerged on something that's completely unstoppable, but it can't be stopped if we choose not to fight and to say, okay, we're just gonna sort of be spectators and sit back and get our popcorn and watch the fight and say, you know, who's gonna win? Is it gonna be the Mueller crowd versus Trump? Because that's not what you're really dealing with. You're dealing with the fight of those in favor of the growth of mankind and the economic emergence of a new renaissance, a new paradigm, versus those who want to see that completely destroyed. So this is not a time to sit back and wait. And I think, you know, what we saw in the recent period, where we're continuing to see the people are looking for leadership. And Lyndon LaRouche and his movement is providing that leadership. And the world recognizes that. The American people have to be brought into recognizing that more fully, because that's their future. So I think I want to stop there, because we can have a further discussion later, but I do, before people take off, want them, this video by our friends in Yemen, about 13 minutes or so.
We will post it in the link.
Yes, and we will post the link in the description, so those who are watching can